I'm going to tell you about the first thing I do to any carbureted gasoline engine. If it's not starting, the first step, and at the same time, an easy repair, I don't even say repair, just say maintenance on this typical motorhome generator. This is an Onan 4 kilowatt generator, which means 4,000 watts, 4 kilowatt. And the old motorhome is going to be my new water tank vehicle. So anyways, it was not starting. And the first thing I do is check for gas. So basically what I did, first thing, I removed the pipe here, and I had gas coming out of here. So I knew there was gasoline coming up to here. But the actual first thing is I'll take off the carburetor filter or cover like this, so it's exposed so you can see directly into the butterfly. This is called the butterfly. This is really well made, by the way. The whole thing is made of brass. I think this is the only carburetor that I've seen that has everything brass. The shaft, the flap itself, and even the screws are brass. Usually they're steel, and little screws are also steel, and they'll rust. It just becomes a nightmare. You pretty much lose the carburetor because of two screws. But moving forward, you expose the carburetor like that, and then I just dump in a little bit of gas like that. Just dump in a little bit. That's even too much. And then you try to start it. Alright, just stop it there. So in my case now I actually fixed it, but what was happening is when I put the gas in, this is pretty much, by putting a bit of gas into the carburetor, that pretty much solves a lot of problems if it starts. Because if it starts, even if for just a little bit, that means that there is spark, there is internal combustion in the engine basically, and there is compression in the engine. So basically that tells you that the only problem is that there's not, fuel isn't reaching the engine, right? Because you're having to do it by hand. The job of the carburetor is to throw fuel into the engine, mix it. If you're having to do it by hand with a gas can, then that means the carburetor is not reaching, it's not getting fuel to the carburetor, or the carburetor's at fault. So the next thing I did was I removed, that being said, so it did start. And if you keep dumping gas into it, it'll actually run. And if you've got a steady hand, you'll get it to actually run pretty smoothly, just by hand, which is pretty cool. Okay, so but then like I let it actually run by hand for a few minutes, but as soon as I got the gas off, it would die. So again, that would just confirm what I already said, that there's not fuel is not getting to the engine. So the next thing I did was remove that fitting there, the fuel fitting. So this pipe is the fuel pipe, as you can see. You follow it around there. And I removed that. And I had some orange gas come out. But then actually just almost no gas was coming out of the fitting. So after I had it removed, so that right away told me that this pipe here was clogged. So then what I did was, I did it a la caveman style. I put my mouth around I took a deep breath, put my mouth around the fuel inlet here, and just blew on it to pressurize the whole thing. And sure enough, that pushed whatever old gas and crap was in that line, and a bunch of fuel started coming out of there. And then I just reconnected the fitting, and voila, I had to do one more thing. But that was step number one, so that was definitely a problem. And what happens is there's ethanol in the gas, which is alcohol. So basically there is water in the gasoline. And over time, that gasoline will separate from the water. You'll have like a sludge or a gel kind of sticky gel-like thing, and that will plug the carburetor and plug the fuel lines. So that's kind of why if you're going to store a vehicle or any carbureted engine for a long period of time, that you drain all the gasoline from the entire system. Even, I mean, like the entire carbureted system, not the fuel tank, but just drain the whole carburetor. So basically you shut off the gas. If you have a valve, that's nice, and you just run the car until it dies, until it uses up all the gasoline in the carburetor. So I knew that was a problem, because after I blew on it, a bunch of fuel came out. But it still wouldn't start. So the next thing I did is I noticed there was this, but right away that told me that there was dirty gas in the carburetor. Even though I ran this engine for a while, there was some kind of junk in it. And then I found this here, right in the back, and I cleaned it up. And this here is, there is a fuel mixture screw, but also you can open that up completely, take it off, and it's a drain plug for the carburetor. So if there's any junk or dirt in the carburetor, you take that thing right off, and then all the gas will come out. And then when you start seeing clean gas, after, I don't know, 10 seconds or so, whatever, how long it takes, you put it back in, and then you have clean gas to the carburetor. Still, if there are some particles might have gotten into the little cavities of the carburetor, which that would be really bad. So it might not solve your problem, but 99.9% of times it does. But the thing is that there also regulates the amount of fuel into the engine, and I'll show you in just a second what happens when I move that. So I'll actually start the engine. As you can see or hear, that's a smooth, good running engine right there. As you can probably hear, it's not running as smoothly. See the vibrations in the sound? It's not a flat sound. It's like, it's still not too bad. But now let me go the other way and close it. See, if I close it too much, it'll stall the engine. And sometimes sometimes you have to move that thing around, and that's what I had to do. I had to open it up and just put it back in, but not close it as tightly. It was probably closed too tight, and there was probably some junk around that there. Now basically what I do is I'll mess around with that until I get the highest RPMs off of the engine. So if you close it too much, you'll get bad. You won't get a smooth sound. And similarly, if you open it too much. And then if the idle is too high, you come in here and adjust this screw here. And that'll adjust your idle to where you want it to be. Or your normal engine, not idle in this case, because these are like basically generators only have one. They don't really accelerate. They just have one velocity really, except for when there's a big load, and then this thing here, the governor injects a bit more fuel, and it accelerates it, but just for a second, and then it returns to that same constant velocity, because that's what electricity needs to get, you know, good quality power. You need steady RPM. You can't have large fluctuations. Yeah, and this here is leaking. Just need to put a clamp on there. All right, so let me just start it up again. So as you can hear, hopefully, that's a steady sound, steady RPM, no RPM fluctuations. And if this was a car, like, there's also that mixture screw there. And really, this one is the last thing you do, because that just adjusts the RPM. So if you're going to run something like that takes up a lot of power, you might just move that screw up, so that I get higher RPMs. But basically, those are the only two things you really mess around with. All right, I hope this helps somebody out there, and take it easy.